place. Let's go to Rome. NBC News foreign correspondent Matt Bradley is there, keeping in mind the numbers right now, Matt, here in the United States are on par with Rome, with Italy, in terms of how this disease has progressed. What's the situation there?
Well, we just passed a really, really grim milestone. We had yesterday the largest increase in a single day in the number of deaths here in Italy. And also we saw the largest increase in the number of new transmissions, of new cases in one day since this whole nationwide lockdown started about a week ago. Now, that's a pretty terrible symbolic step, but we're probably going to see another very grim milestone today. Now, Italy is probably going to surpass China in the number of deaths that have come from the coronavirus. And we'll probably hear that in the next couple of hours. We don't know for sure, but we always get the statistics every day here in Italy at about 6 p.m. And that's when we'll see, very likely, that Italy will have surpassed China in terms of number of fatalities. Now, we also heard from the Prime Minister, Conte, last night. He told the Italian media that this lockdown, this unprecedented nationwide lockdown, is going to be extended past April 3rd. So that means that he probably saw those statistics and was shocked by what is a lag. Now, I just heard Joe mentioning that lag of 3 weeks. That's what we're seeing here. We haven't seen, despite this really, really strict lockdown that's been across the entire country, we haven't seen that coming up in the numbers. We haven't actually seen the statistics reflect what is this unprecedented, and I keep using this term, unprecedented lockdown here in Italy, because we haven't seen the effect in the statistics, and that's probably because a lot of the deaths were people who got the disease before the lockdown started. But again, the transmissions are also a problem. If we're not seeing that, that could be that the lockdown isn't really having much of an effect. And that was one of the reasons that the Prime Minister came out and said that he actually chastised the public and told them that they need to comply with these orders. They need to be staying indoors. And that's why he also is going to be restricting the amount of time that grocery stores, which is one thing you can still go to here in Italy. You can still go to a grocery store. You can still go to the pharmacy. Those hours of operation are going to be constricted because it seems like the government here is very frustrated with the lack of efficacy from this nationwide crackdown on walking around, even though the streets, they seem pretty empty.
Hey, Matt,
Willie?
Matt, it's Willie. We're looking at pictures as you're speaking of makeshift hospitals in Italy and healthcare workers trying to attend to those who are sick. A lot of Americans have been looking at Italy over the last couple of weeks as perhaps a preview of what's headed our way, as you say, a couple of weeks ahead of us. What is the situation today inside the hospitals? We're already seeing overruns in New York City and other big cities of sick people.
Yeah, I mean, the situation inside the hospitals is really dire. This is one of the most advanced health systems in the world, especially in Lombardy in the north, where the vast majority of the cases here are. You know, you can't say that this is a backward health system. It is actually quite advanced, quite wealthy, and they're still really overly stretched. We heard from doctors and nurses who've been saying that, you know, they're parsing out these ventilators. They don't have enough to go around, and now they don't really have enough hospital beds. So Lombardy is going to start, or has started, basically exporting cases to elsewhere in Italy. They're having to transfer patients. And here's a really macabre sign of the times here. They're actually kind of exporting corpses. They're not able to handle in all of the cemeteries and the morgues the number of corpses that they've been getting. Again, you saw this massive increase in the number of deaths. So the bodies are going to have to be moved outside of the Lombardy region in northern Italy to elsewhere in Italy for burial and for cremation. And that's because they just don't have the capacity not only to handle the living people, but even the dead.
So, Matt, what do health officials believe constitutes a reason for the big difference between the impact on the coronavirus in northern Italy versus southern Italy? Obviously, northern Italy hit the worst, parts of southern Italy not feeling the effects.
Yeah, well, you know, there was a lag in the amount of time in which they cracked down on people's movements in northern Italy, and that's one of the reasons why this outbreak blossomed the way it did in Lombardy, to the extent that it even is now surpassing the situation in China. But there was a lockdown in northern Italy that prevented the disease from spreading further south. And that's why here in Rome, which is obviously Italy's largest city by far, there haven't really been that many cases. And so the government has stepped in and has restricted people's movements. And so it has been effective in the sense that they have managed to, even though this is a really dire situation in northern Italy, they have managed to keep it from spreading to the rest of the country. It's unclear whether or not that's going to stay. You know, the big question for a lot of Italians is, even if we do comply with these very, very restrictive rules, is it going to be effective? Has the damage already been done? Because, you know, I've made this point before, once this disease insinuates itself, it's unclear whether or not even the most dramatic efforts will be able to halt the spread. And that's what we're seeing in Lombardy. But so far, as you mentioned, we're not seeing that in southern Italy, where the health system is much, much, much weaker. So that has been one benefit of this. The crackdown has geographically restricted the spread.
Matt Bradley, thank you for your reporting.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.